We traveled in train from Ollantaytambo to Aguascalientes. It was an old railroad that bordered the Urabamba River, sacred to the Incan culture. We went from different altitudes and I was amazed at the gradual changes in vegetation. Also, the drinks they offered in the train were surprisingly good.
All throughout the trip, we saw many sellers in the street that tried to sell us all sorts of different things like hats and pens and scarves and gloves and things like that. The first few days it was kind of entertaining because you saw the hats and you saw the gloves and the socks and they were kind of funny. But after we spent 7 days in Peru and we saw the same things over and over, it got kind of annoying.
On our way to Ollantaytambo during the trip, we stopped at a market. That is what they call the typical market there, and it's supposed to be one of the biggest ones in the area with the biggest variety of handmade artifacts that are typical in El Peru. The market was very interesting because you had a very interesting contrast, because it was surrounded by high-end commercial buildings where you would find high-end shops like the soy alpaca one that we found in many restaurants. That was like the high-end shops, but as well you saw little like tent huts of people that you could see that worked very hard to sell, and that like you tried to lower the prices, and you could see that like they suffered because like that's the money that they feed their kids with. But the market was very interesting to see the contrast of like the commercial with the more subsistence form of selling the different kinds of typical things, of artisanal things in Peru, and the market was really interesting.
Dominating the Peruvian landscape, one could see hundreds of terraces. These terraces, to my belief, attest to the Incas' great ingenuity and great architectural skill. What I find most interesting about them is how the Incas used these terraces sort of to shape the face of a mountain for their own purposes. Just imagine like huge stairs made of rock that is hard to get up there, where they grew their crops. So what I believe, well, they also represent sort of would be the Incas' resilience. They didn't get overwhelmed by the challenges nature presented them, and that is what I believe makes them an amazing ancient civilization.
The 12-hour hike was the most physically demanding part of the whole trip. As we walked through the heart of the Andes Mountains, we saw its amazing mountains and landscape. During this walk, we saw some pre-Incan constructions and much of the wildlife from that area. It was something we never had seen before, and probably won't ever see again. Even though this hike was so long and very physically demanding, it was one of our favorite parts of this trip. It showed what Peru was really about, what this trip was really about.
Sacsayhuaman is the capital of the Incan Empire, which is built by several walls made of boulders carefully cut to fit together. These establishments were anti-seismical and built in a zigzag way. This place has a special location that makes it special for the culture preservation and an accommodating place with a beautiful view. This may be one of the reasons why it's so sacred, since it is one of the places that is connected to the Inca Trail.
In Cusco, we visited the cathedral and the Incan cemetery. Throughout Cusco, you could see the Incan architecture and the Spanish impact. We also visited a few markets.
Ollantaytambo is a fort, one of the last forts the Incas had, and is one of the reasons Machu Picchu is still here. The fort is huge as it has some rocks that are bigger than 20 tons. And you're especially awestruck when you see that the quarry was more than a kilometer away. And also it is shaped like a llama.
Throughout the trip, we visited different restaurants where we were served with different typical Peru dishes, such as the alpaca, the cuy, and the worldwide known ceviche, which was really good. There were also some dishes that were called the causa, which was some sort of mix of potato and other ingredients. This video was made by Samuel Fajardo, Alejandro Samper, Lorenzo Sánchez, Mateo Osorio, Tomás Cayón, Tomás Urrutia, Rafael Ponce, William Bergman, Carlos Riascos, Sebastián Fernández de Soto.